great to have you all here. Before we begin, one of the things we want to be able to do is have as much interaction as we can with the board members visually. So we ask that people who aren't on the board and who aren't speaking to please turn their cameras off. That'll enable us to be able to see each other. And also, just for background noise, we want to ask everybody to keep their mics off. So we will go into the meeting. Also a reminder just that when we call the roll, it's going to be alphabetical. That does not mean that member Aardvark is that much more important than member Zebra, although I guess we could make the case. It's simply the way we do it. But just as you're preparing for your roll call, though, we're doing it alphabetical. And with that, may I turn it over to Kathleen and ask you to call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Beer.
Here.
Campbell.
Here.
Doherty.
Here.
Norton. I see you.
Present.
Ryback.
Here.
Staver.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Wheelock.
Here.
Mr. Chair, 8 members present.
Excellent. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
And Kathleen, I can just do that on oh, that has to be a roll call as well, doesn't it?
Yep, and I'll
Okay.
I'll rip through it. Beer.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Doherty.
Aye.
Norton.
Aye.
Ryback.
Here?
Staver.
Aye, sorry.
Staver.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
8 votes aye, Mr. Chair.
All right, let's do it again. We have a motion to approve the minutes.
So
of
moved.
August 27th.
Second.
Okay.
I have
Kathleen, you want to call
Clarke
it?
and Norton. Okay. Beer.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Doherty.
Aye.
Norton.
Aye.
Ryback.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
8-0, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. All right, well, now we'll move to the chair's report. And I want to just give a little background for a couple things that are going to be happening today. One of which is we're going to go over the 5-year development update. And I think one of the things that's going to be especially important about this, it's about moving long term. And it's hard for us to think long term when we have this big thing called COVID in front of our face. But it's important to think that these two things are connected. We didn't use this 5-year planning just to look down the road and then over here think about COVID. The reality in the first year and really few years out here, there's going to be tails of COVID. So that's woven into that plan. And I think we'll be able to touch on that a little more as we go through. We're going to be approving some construction documents for Discovery Walk, which I think is an awfully exciting part of it. And we also are going to be hearing from Jeff Bolton from Mayo Clinic, and I think this is important for us on issues of how much workforce growth will be anticipated in this different sort of world. What does that mean for our transportation and other issues? We're also going to have in the consent agenda, there are resolutions for 3 people who've had an enormous impact on this. Council President Staver, we're going to thank you for your time on this board. We are going to thank Steve Rymer for his leadership at the city. And we are going to thank Lisa Clarke, who of course has been the leader of this effort from the very, very beginning. So that will be on the consent agenda. We can always take something off the consent agenda if somebody disapproves, but I hardly think anybody could question the great work they're doing. I shouldn't bias the vote, but it is true. There's one item that would seem small on the agenda, but I want to call it out, and it's the waterfront. And I think the mayor has spoken publicly and eloquently about our need to really focus on the waterfront. And I really want to say I'm really excited we're going to have that on the agenda today, because this was one of the most exciting parts of the original plan. And when you really look at all that we've done, but what we have left to do, I would really say one of the great opportunities is the waterfront. And I think it's really exciting that this is something that the mayor really has put on our agenda. So I'm very, very pleased that we'll be able to be talking about that today. So let us move on to that consent agenda. Is there anything anybody wants to pull off that agenda? There are a couple of resolutions we have, but aside from the resolutions, anything anyone wants to pull off? Okay. All right, so first one is professional auditing services. This is, there's a resolution in the packet approving the appointment of Clifton Larson Allen. That's subject to negotiation and the final agreement. Does somebody want to move that motion?
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt, maybe one person could move the entire consent agenda and second it, and then we can vote on all of it at once.
Oh, good. I don't have to move the individual resolutions.
Right, yeah.
Got it, got that. Okay, wonderful.
Mr. Chair,
All right.
I would,
Move. Yeah. Move.
I'd move approval. Yep, and I'd second.
Okay. Then Kathleen, do you want to call the roll?
Do you want to, Mr. Chair, go through the rest of the consent agenda and then we'll vote at the end of it?
Yes, I knew that.
Okay.
All right. So, but my confusion is, don't I have to give the resolutions?
Mr. Chair, I think we've moved the whole packet of the resolutions and the consent agenda. So now is the opportunity for discussion on any of the items that are included in the motion.
Great. So is there any time for discussion that anyone want to bring anything up for discussion from the agenda?
Well, Mr. Chair, since the commendations are part of that consent agenda, perhaps some conversation about the commendations might be in order. And I think you probably had planned for that. So
Yes, would you want to start that?
well, I'm probably the newest member on this board, or maybe not anymore, but I have a short tenure, and yet I would say the participation and the engagement on this board has been exceptional, and the leadership of the public elected officials that you have already acknowledged in the resolution, I think are just critical to the success of the mission of the Destination Medical Center. And I have really appreciated the engagement of Lisa. I can't imagine how she's going to fill her time without us. And I would imagine that, you know, she would welcome daily calls from all of us to talk about how she's doing and help her with her transition. But I'm very glad that she and Patrick were able to form such an effective partnership, and we're left with such strong leadership in your place, Lisa. But I'm really excited for you about this next phase of your life, and I appreciate all you've done for us here at the DMCC.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you.
Other comments?
I'm happy to chime in here too. We have two city employees, or well, actually one city employee, one city council member, and then of course Lisa as the lead for DMC. So they bring three different perspectives and three different roles actually. And I've had an opportunity to work with all of them, some longer than others, on this initiative. And of course, Lisa, I worked with you the longest, starting at the state capitol. Digging through a really fascinating and fast-paced year of getting the Destination Medical Center passed. And of course, you were up there at the Capitol quite often, taking a lead on that and working to get something really, it's just going to be super change. It's a change. I mean, this is going to make a huge difference in what Rochester was before and what Rochester will be. Without this, you know, none of this could have happened. And we're just at the beginning of 20 years, we're 5 years in. And so you did come in and take the lead of the organization and have really provided that continuity and vision from the very beginning, and helped everybody understand the direction that we were going and keep us on track. And so thank you very much for your vision and creativity and help making DMC a reality. Randy, you're a little newer here on because you worked for Mayo for part of the time and couldn't serve. And I know you've really enjoyed this last year, and I'm glad you had a chance to come onto the board and be a voice for the city. I think it was probably hard for you to sit at the board table and not be able to take that role, but you did. And it's been a pleasure to work with you here these last few months as you've had your chance to provide city leadership. And of course, we'll say our goodbyes to you at the city council because you're not running again. That's another role, and we'll miss you. We'll miss you there as well. And lastly, to Steve Rymer, we are going to be saying goodbye to Steve too. It's a really interesting time. Lisa's going to hopefully be in the community and continue to do things. Randy will be around, and I know he's already active in other roles in the community, but Steve is not continuing to be in our community. And so I want to thank him for being a newbie to our community, but still stepping up and really embracing DMC and all it meant for our community as an outsider when he first got here. And I wish him every success, of course, as he transitions into a warmer world out on the coast. We're going to be really jealous here in the next little bit. But all three of these individuals have just been such strong supporters of DMC and helped us move the vision along. And so I want to thank them all very much for their very different but very beneficial service to DMC. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Well, this is Jim Campbell, and I have been on this board since it was created, and so I've seen all the incredible activities from day one, and Randy and Steve and Lisa, as the mayor said, we really, to have a city employee, to have a council member, and then have Lisa from the DMC. This has been a team game, and I have to say that at the very beginning, we didn't know how to play the game very well. And I take my hat off to Lisa because she persevered here. She never gave up. She had a vision of where this thing should go. And we're where we are today as a result of how hard you've worked and the vision that you've had. And so we'll miss all three of you. But in the case of all good things in life, there are people that'll step in. And Lisa, I'm really thrilled that you and Patrick have developed such a good relationship. And we look forward to Patrick stepping in and taking us to the next level. So to the three of you, thank you very much for your dedication, for your commitment. And as the mayor said, this is probably one of the most exciting things that could happen to any city, not only in Minnesota, but across the United States. And in some respects, the table is set for just a great future. And I'm just thrilled to have been a part of it, and want to say thanks a lot to all of you.
Thank you, Jim.
Mr. Chair, I'll just, like Pam, I still feel like a newbie, despite I think being a couple of years in, and Randy, I'm sorry, we didn't get a chance to work much more closely in that time since you've come on the board. But I just, as a former deputy mayor, I always appreciate the relationship, the roles, and the connections between city and especially council, and that perspective and the role that you all play. When I first came on board, I came down and spent an entire day just on the ground trying to get to know the city, and the city folks were fabulous. Steve in particular allowed me to sit with his staff in various combinations and really get to know. And I know that the transformation going on within city government has been really important, and I think is exciting. And so I appreciate that role that council with Mayor Norton and with the administration has been particularly important. And also, Lisa, to you, in terms of my being new, I'm just grateful for your openness and your willingness to ride along with me as I really brought some different questions and different perspectives, I think, to the conversation. And you have taken and gone on that journey with me in I think some really wonderful ways. So I've learned from you. I've learned a ton about the community from you all, and just really grateful. Heavy lifting being in these kind of leadership positions. So many different perspectives and pressures, and I just really appreciate the way that you've navigated that. And so just grateful for the service of all three. And I agree with Jim that I'm really excited about kind of the next iteration of the work.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Other comments? Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair, I'm just
Maria.
going to add one more comment. These are the moments where I really, really struggle with this virtual world that we're in, because it's so unfulfilling
It
to
is.
not be here in person and frankly give you all hugs.
Right.
So it's just really a struggle for us to fully acknowledge the contribution you've made and the importance of your roles in this virtual world. But I know the rest of the members will add additional comments, and we'll just have to put a rain check in there for that opportunity when the world is a different place.
Rain checks are good, Pam.
Great.
Lisa, Mike Doherty. I follow up what Jim has to say, and I'll be brief so that we can get on with the meeting. But you've been terrific. We've had a lot of fun. We laugh a lot, and we've accomplished a lot. And I'd just like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, and also thank you on behalf of Mayo. And as we indicated earlier, we're going to have a time down the road where we will do this appropriately. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Let me then take a minute to thank all three. Randy, from the beginning, you've been a real coach for me. You've helped me understand what's the gap between a good idea and a good idea that's going to fly in Rochester, and really help bring the voice of your constituents in a real great way. And I think you've been also a real voice of common sense and thoughtful deliberation. I really, really appreciated that. Steve, you came in at a really critical period of time, and you gave us a real shot of energy and really opened even more the communication with the city, and that's very, very much appreciated. And Lisa, I hope in your travels you don't wind up somehow deserted on a desert island somewhere. But the reason I mention that is I have no doubt you will get off of that and bring everyone off with you, because to me, you are a person who does a couple things really, really well. One of them is you have an incredible ability to just figure it out. And when there has been a problem, it has big solutions, small ones, whatever, you figure it out. But the other reason you're going to get off that desert island is that if I was trying to do it, I'd get frustrated a lot. You, to me, seem to be somebody who, when the wall is in front of you, you take the challenge and you figure out some way to get over it. And that's what you've done for us. You've gotten us off many desert islands throughout all of this, and you've kept our spirits up. And I just really, we've worked together a lot over this period of time. And one of the great measures of a professional partnership is whether you like the person more at the end than the beginning. And you cannot always say that, but it is absolutely the case in this one. So I just want to thank you for all of that.
Thank you.
Seeing no other comments, I will then, now I'll ask.
I just got to add my
Go
2
ahead,
cents.
yes.
It would be remiss if I didn't add, being an original member of the DMC, between Randy and Lisa, you've done a lot of good work. Lisa, we've, like Jim said, we've shared a lot of good times, gone through a lot of hard times, and it's just, you've really done a great job. And I really appreciate your leadership in this, because leading somebody like me through this is difficult, and I think everybody would agree with that. Randy, you know what I'm talking about too. So that's all I have. Thank you.
That is very good, Jim Versal. Thank you very much. Okay, so now, Lisa, go ahead.
Chair Ryback, if you wouldn't mind if I could just make a couple of comments of thanks. I really want to thank all of you. I feel quite fortunate to have been providing leadership to this amazing, extraordinary initiative. And when I started this journey, it's been quite a ride. Mayor, you said it. We started, almost 10 years ago on this journey. I had a few things I wanted to get done before I leave. And one is to steer this initiative through the legislative session, which in and of itself is quite a journey. I wanted to develop a solid governance to give this organization a solid governance foundation. And look at this screen and this board. This is a perfect example of solid, seasoned experience that's going to carry this initiative on for the next 15 years. I wanted to build a staff team with experience, passion, and competence, a team like no other. And I feel so fortunate and so blessed that I have this team that I have extreme confidence in to move this initiative forward. I wanted to build an organization that was sustainable. I wanted to develop a strong network of partners, because this initiative can't be anything without partners: state, local, regional, city, county, national, international. We have partners all over the world with DMC. And then, of course, I wanted to tell the world about what a big deal Rochester is for the state of Minnesota. And I feel like the team, the boards, and we rang the bell on all of these. So I want to tell you that I'm proud of this initiative. I'm proud of DMC. I'm proud of the work that we've done over the first 5 years. I am thankful to each one of you because I developed a personal relationship with each of you that I hope I can carry with me for years to come. And I am so excited to see where this initiative is going, because it's going to soar. You know, despite pandemics, we are coming at it from a position of strength, and it will soar. So my sincere thanks to all of you.
Beautifully said. Thank you very much. And now for the 6th time, Kathleen, do you want to call the roll?
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to, and this is for resolutions A, B, C, and D, as well as the DMCC year-to-date budget update. And so I will call and I have it offered by Commissioner Beer, seconded by Commissioner Wheelock. All right, Beer. We'll come back. Thank you. Okay. Campbell.
Aye.
Doherty.
Aye.
Norton.
Aye.
Ryback.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
That's 8-0, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you. I'm glad that was unanimous. Very good. So now we're going to move on to the public hearing for the 5-year development plan update. We're going to do the public hearing, but first we're going to ask the staff to present to us, and then we're going to have our discussion. So those of you who want comments, we will take those after we have our discussion. Go ahead, Lisa.
All right, sounds good. Let's pull up our slides quickly. So what we're expecting of this group today, actually, the requested action is for you to endorse or actually adopt the 5-year update to the DMC development plan. And I think I've shared with all of you also, this has been in front of City Council also, and they have endorsed this plan in, of course, contingent on this meeting today and your adoption of the 5-year plan. So the 5-year plan, you have in your packet the full plan. And we were, as RT said, we were very committed and diligent about this plan, because like, why would we do a 5-year plan? And there's so many reasons. We want to make sure that all that we're doing, our strategies are matching our market conditions. And we've been updating this plan regularly. So it is basically an update to a plan. We want to make sure that we are accounting for what we did. So we pulled together all the data to say what's happened in these first 5 years. It's so important that we start to share our progress so that people know that the model is working. So that's in the plan. We gathered quite a bit of community input, and we intend to continue to do that. So we've had community input sessions on this 5-year plan, and we've changed the plan based on some of that input. And we will continue to have community input. And then, of course, we have to update our plan every 5 years because it's a requirement of the state law. And you know what? It's just good business to continue to update this plan. In this plan, you'll see the first 5-year results, of course, in a package. And then we also will show you the plans for the DMC initiative for the next 5 years, including, as Chair Ryback mentioned, the COVID-19 impact analysis, which we hired a firm called HRNA, which you'll hear about in a minute. So with that, just a snapshot of what you're going to hear. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Patrick Sieb, who provided all the leadership to bring this 5-year plan to fruition. So Patrick, I'm going to turn it over to you, please.
Thank you, Lisa and Mr. Chair, members. I will quickly review some of the material you have already seen because as you recall, you took action on this in August. You directed us to do some additional work, which we've done, and we've brought that in front of City Council that they, as Lisa said, they've acted on. And so today's presentation is going to we're going to spend a bit more time on the new information that you asked us to work on. Before I get to that though, quickly as a reminder, part of our update is a look back, and this is a clean distillation of how we have made progress in the first 5 years against the metrics that were established in the DMC development plan. And I won't spend time on that. Just know that that's part of this report. Also, as a part of the report is an indication of how resources have been spent. And of the $585 million that you direct, about $98 million were committed during the first phase, catalyzing more than $900 million, nearly $1 billion worth of private development. And again, you can see how that $98 million was used in different categories. When we left you in August, we said that one of the areas of work that we were going to spend time on is the discussion of the impact of the DMC development work with respect to tax impact. And to assist us with that, we retained a firm called Urban 3, who specializes in helping cities understand the impact of development decisions on the growth of the tax base. And we have a webinar that we produced that was well attended. It's archived on our website. Well worth watching if you had a chance or had an opportunity. A few key takeaways from that presentation was one, this message that why downtowns matter, and in particular a dense downtown like Rochester, where the amount of tax base generated in a very small geography benefits the entire community. In fact, in Rochester, the DMC district is physically less than 1% of the entire geography of Rochester, and yet it contributes more than 14% of the total property taxes. So part of the message coming out of that work that they did for us is that more than many cities and more than almost any city our size, our downtown is a huge generator of tax capacity that supports the rest of the community. Another piece of work, and I can happy to respond to any questions about that. And as I said, we have an hour-long webinar that really has the consultant providing the deep background to all of that work. Another piece of work that you asked us to look at was the impact that COVID would have on our economy. And knowing that it would be both short-term and long-term.
How are you?
Both short-term and long-term. Molly, you may need, Molly.
I am not.
Molly, yeah. Both short-term and long-term. To assist us with that, we retain the firm of HR&A, a New York-based firm that specializes in economic analysis. They've done work here in Rochester, southeastern Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and all over the region in the past. And we asked them to come in and assist us with this analysis. And I'm going to invite a member of that staff, Aaron Lonoff, to walk through their, briefly walk through their analysis. And so with that, Aaron, I will move the slide deck, but I'll let you come on live here.
Perfect. Can everyone hear me? I think that's a yes.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Lonoff. I'm with HR&A Advisors. We are headquartered in New York, but I am based in Minneapolis. I grew up in the region, and as Patrick has said, we've done a lot of work in southern Minnesota throughout the Twin Cities. So I'll walk through our analysis very briefly, and I'm happy to answer questions. And as Patrick mentioned, we also did an hour-long webinar where we walked through sort of the full in-depth analysis. At a high level, as we're thinking about COVID and the economic recovery of COVID, at a very high level, we're thinking about the recovery in 3 stages. This first stage is sort of this economic shock. How deep is this shock going to be as a result of COVID? How many businesses are going to be closed as a result of COVID? And what are all the different economic changes that are going to take place? The next phase is this rate of recovery. How long is it going to take, and what is the shape of that recovery? There's a lot of there's been a lot of sort of look at other pandemics or epidemics, recent epidemics, and a lot of the research around that sort of ties economic recovery with public health milestones and the return of consumer confidence. So that rate of recovery is really going to be tied to consumer confidence and the release of a vaccine or therapeutic for COVID-19. And then this third phase is really about what does the long term look like for the economy in terms of our new normal? What activities are here to stay that we've sort of adopted in COVID, such as remote work? There are likely going to be many office-based jobs that are going to be permanently remote. For example, the Mayo Clinic has announced that 1,500 of its employees are going to be permanently at home in the long term. So post-COVID, how does that affect economic recovery for downtown Rochester and impact planning for the DMC? If you go to the next slide. So our model looks at 3 pieces of the Rochester economy: the direct impacts of COVID-19, the indirect impacts, and the induced impacts, to estimate the total economic change or the total change in economic activity. And these are useful metrics, but what is more useful for your long-term planning and the DMC is translating that economic activity into the change in retail space needs, the change in hotel needs, multifamily development and office, so that you all can make strategic long-term plans and update your 5-year plan for the future. If you go to the next slide, I'll briefly walk through what we found. So following a significant loss in economic activity, we've projected a gradual recovery in the Rochester economy over the next 2 years. So we were able to look at actual observed data between December of 2019 and June of 2020 and saw a loss in economic activity of about 20%. And that economic activity includes direct jobs, indirect jobs, which are the spending by those employed by those companies, and the induced activity related to that spending of those employees. So said differently, this also includes those who were furloughed and those who are working from home, as their spending was reduced in the Rochester economy. From there, we then began to project out, where do you go from here, and how might recovery look? And we modeled this in 3 scenarios: low, medium, and high, or an optimistic to most conservative scenario, where it varied by when the vaccine or therapeutic might be released, and then therefore soon after when consumer confidence might return. And we also varied this by what the new normal might look like. So in the most optimistic scenario, activity in this new normal phase looks a lot like what December 19 looked like in Rochester, where very few people are working remotely and the hospitality industry has recovered fully. In the most pessimistic scenario or conservative scenario, we were assuming more remote work for office-based employees and a reduction in the hospitality industry as a result of reduced conferences and perhaps a reduction in the average length of patient stay in Rochester. And that resulted in a 2 to 7% reduction in economic activity in December of 2022 when compared to December of 2019. So let's talk about what Rochester can do and what this means for the DMC. So prior to COVID-19, Rochester had a growing economy. Its development was largely aligned with demand. And there's a lot of uncertainty around COVID-19 that no one fully understands yet. Our model is suggesting that there's going to be excess office capacity due to losses in jobs in this sector, as well as long-term remote work. The retail and restaurant industry in Rochester is going to be disproportionately affected, or particularly the businesses that are most dependent on employees and visitors are going to be disproportionately affected in the long term. Hotels have experienced a precipitous drop in occupancy rates because of the drop in visitors to Rochester. Rochester has a very strong pipeline in hotel rooms, and so the market is going to continue to see occupancy rates well below historical averages. And then finally, housing demand, and this is sort of one of the positives that we're seeing, is that housing demand continues to be strong in Rochester. People need places to live, and we're continuing to see a potential growth for housing in downtown Rochester. And this housing is also going to be important for supporting retail in downtown. So where do we go from here? It's really important that Rochester remain nimble. Unlike other natural disasters, this pandemic has hit every city across the country. It's going on everywhere. The difference is how these cities react and how they plan for their futures. Not all cities are developing recovery strategies. And we applaud Rochester for thinking ahead now, starting now to think about what the near and long term looks like. That's going to put you at a place of strength going forward. So despite significant losses, Rochester has fared better than other cities. Going into this pandemic, you all had a very strong economy, you have strong industries, and you have institutions that are going to put you in a place of strength going forward, including the Mayo Clinic and your healthcare industry. So as you think about the future, we have a number of suggestions on how to remain nimble and the things that you might consider as you develop your strategies. So it's really important that you support your existing local businesses, those that have made it so far and those that are working hard to stay open. It's critical that these retail businesses and these local businesses be supported to ensure vibrancy in Rochester. It's important to prioritize public infrastructure. These infrastructure investments are what make downtown Rochester a great place to visit and live and work. And this is a way to sort of continue to promote Rochester as a place to make investments. There may be ways to creatively reuse your excess real estate capacity. And you can look to other cities on what they are doing right now in COVID, for example, the reuse of hotel rooms. And you can also look to the last economic recession on ways that cities have reused their office buildings creatively, their Class B and C office buildings to conversions into residential, for example. This is an opportunity to diversify the economy. Having a diverse economy is a way that cities make themselves resilient to economic disasters. And this is one way to think about this for Rochester is having a diverse economy will help you get through this. And support development proactively. Think about the ways that you can support investments that are taking place and do this in a way that supports the long-term vision for Rochester and meets the immediate needs of coming out of the COVID recovery or coming out of the COVID crisis.
Thank you, Erin. Mr. Chair, we could pause here for a moment. There is the next piece of this presentation talks about looking forward. Just leave it to you if you would like to engage any conversation with Erin or members of the team at this point.
RT, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. I'm certain there are questions here, but I do think if we got everything on the table, it would help us. So if people wouldn't
Great.
mind to just hold that, and have us go through. That would give us a chance to maybe have some questions that we might ask answered in the presentation.
Great. Thank you then. Just looking forward, we positioned this presentation into 5 buckets. One being looking forward with respect to private investment. And we anticipate our work going forward around private investment in supporting economic diversification, housing affordability, Main Street innovation, supporting local entrepreneurs, and building up the capacity for local minority and women-owned businesses. We have a category we talk about with respect to mobility. This has been a priority for the organization. We have the Rapid Transit Initiative. We're building out micro-mobility options, meaning the whole plethora of options around how people can get into and move about the downtown. We know that there needs to be system-wide enhancements that occur, so it can't just be the new rapid transit line. And then ultimately, it's about the experience we're creating for people so that using these other modes and other options for transportation are equally compelling to single occupancy vehicle. Public realm, Aaron talked about the importance of public infrastructure investment. Certainly the public realm is a place where we are doing that. Being more strategic around using public space as a catalyst for economic development. So more than sort of if we build it, they will come, but being more intentional around how public space can help catalyze new investment. Being more intentional about connection to neighborhoods so that we can really create a seamless experience for particularly the close-in neighborhoods to easily access and get to the downtown. Streets and sewers, understanding that these are generational investments. When Urban 3, Joe Minicozy did his presentation, he outlined the aging infrastructure in Rochester that will need to be replaced. And these are generational investments, 50-year investments, some of which are coming due right now. This notion of complete streets approach, and that's sort of a fancy term to say when you dig up a street to put in a sewer, think about everything else that you can do as you're replacing that sewer and replacing that street. And then it ultimately all comes back to the experience we're creating, that we really need to understand the aspirations of people who live in the community, businesses who operate in the community, and patients who are arriving here, and visitors who are coming for other reasons, to really understand and really maybe create a Venn diagram that talks about what's the overlap between the experiences that people are looking for in any one of those personas, and really focus on those areas. Sorry, having a little trouble. Aaron mentioned that Rochester, unlike many other cities, is proactively developing a strategy. We have the good fortune of having a strong institution here with Mayo Clinic, but we also have the DMC initiative and the tools associated with that. I mentioned earlier that you've invested about $98 million of the total $585 that's available. In the second phase, we expect that there will be about $200 million available for you to direct into these categories, which are shown here for illustrative purposes or order of magnitude purposes, if you will, not for definition. You will make decisions annually about how resources are spent, but just know that you will be directing about $200 million in public infrastructure investment for mobility and public realm, streets and sewers, catalyzing private development and the operating and programmatic support necessary. I will just end by saying, even during this year, in actually year 1 of phase 2, a lot has happened. And reconstruction of Peace Plaza underway, the opening of the Wells Fargo renovated Wells Fargo building, Hotel Indigo, which completed its work and had a massed ribbon cutting. The Berkman out near St. Mary's Hospital, 345 housing units. The sewer repair work under 2nd Street, disruptive as it was for a few weeks, now complete. Opening of Crave. There are actually 3 new restaurants that have opened in downtown Rochester during this pandemic, including Crave, as a part of the Indigo development. And then we've seen businesses that have pivoted, become innovative, found ways to continue to serve customers in this new environment. Another new apartment building in downtown, street level retail. And of course, we're thrilled about the groundbreaking that began with 2 Discovery Square, supported by this board in February, and with a lot of hands-on work between the developer, Mayo Clinic, and the community, finding a way to get that project underway in spite of the disruption. So those images are to signal that phase 2 has already begun, and we have a lot of momentum going into phase 2 and a set of strategies to lead us out of our current situation. Mr. Chair, that represents the presentation for the moment, and we'll leave it to you to consider public comment.
Great. We at this point don't have anyone signed up for public comments, so a last call on that. And if we have not had anyone sign up yet.
Mr. Chair, if I
Go
could,
ahead.
Mr. Chair, I think that you have to officially open the public hearing and then call for public comment. And if there is none, then officially close it.
All right, so let us open the public hearing.
And I believe Cody, if there is anyone on the line, Cody can help manage the speakers.
Okay,
That's right.
we have not
Chair
had
Ryback,
anyone sign up yet, but go ahead, Cody.
That's correct. No one has signed up. Is there anyone here in the meeting who would like to address the board? Would anyone like to speak during the public hearing? And Chair Ryback, Kathleen, I'm not hearing anyone.
Good, thank you very much. So hearing none, we'll then take this time for our comments, and I'll close the public hearing. Okay, go ahead. I see Member Williams first.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just want to take the opportunity to thank the staff for really good work in this update. I had a chance to sit in on the webinar with HR and NA and the economic analysis. I thought it was just excellent work. And boy, every city in this country ought to be going through that kind of analysis just to understand, the implications for your community. I'm sure many are, but I thought it was a really good piece of work, and I'm really glad it was part of that. My question, my comment goes immediately. So what can accelerate in this next phase? What can accelerate recovery? And what are the strategies in particular? So when I think it was slide 16 that had the 5 or 6 different strategies. Patrick referenced them. To me, it is just my sense, infrastructure investments, and obviously this next 2 years is kind of a really good time to do city building and placemaking as things are kind of slower and now recovering. So I think that's obvious, but I was really struck by the importance and the priority I think that needs to be placed on infrastructure investments, in particular housing. It's wonderful to hear that housing remains a strength even in the midst of this, and I think affordable housing, not surprisingly, I think is particularly important to keep in that mix. Public spaces and equity strategies, I think, are all kind of higher priorities to me that jump out and might be accelerants at a time where things are kind of slowly rebuilding. So I know we'll have lots of opportunities over the course of the next couple of years to approve things as they go along, but I really do hope we place some emphasis. I think those are strengths, and it's a really good time to do some of that work. Transit, I think, is also obviously important as we figure out what the new normal is going to look like. And the new normal will not look like where we were in January of 2020. So just my 2 cents. And again, really, really good work by the staff. And I'm very supportive of the update.
Great. And I have in the queue Member Campbell and Mayor Norton. Anyone else want to get in the queue right now? Got it. Okay, Jim, and just raise your hand and I'll identify you.
Yeah, I agree with Paul. The work is outstanding, and I think it really gives us a clear view of what our priorities should be. Let's face it, the private investment for the next couple of years are going to be really tough. I mean, the people that have already made the investments are going to scramble to just sort of hang on. And so it really comes down to the public sector to sort of step in, and sort of like the state bonding bill. I mean, we tried to get it done. It's a great time to with interest rates low and people looking for work, it's a great time for the public sector, the city and the county. And my sense is, having been in Rochester a lot this summer, the city is really going at it and spending the money, sewers and streets, and I think the focus on streets and sewers, the fact that you dig it up once and fix everything. I mean, now is the time to do that, and it just seems like that's exactly what we should be doing, along with the public realm, the move to the river, those kinds of things we should be working on in the next couple of years while the private sector is sort of catching its breath. And then, as Paul says, the mobility, the transit thing is really critical. And so I guess I know Mayor Norton wants to speak next, but I'd really be interested in hearing what she has to say. Again, I repeat myself, my sense is that the city is really, I thank them and take my hat off to them for really stepping up and starting to deal with these critical infrastructure issues that'll really help us down the road.
Good. Mayor Norton, and then in the queue, I have Council President Staver next. Go
Thanks.
ahead,
Yeah, thank you both, Paul and Jim, for those comments. I echo a lot of what you've said. And I'll tell you, we've taken, and DMC takes its fair share of criticism. But I agree that as hard as it was to go through this last summer, we absolutely have to get those sewer systems and this infrastructure done. And I know it felt like a double whammy for some people with COVID and those projects being done. But at least it's not going to be drug out for year after year so that they have multiple year effects. We took advantage as best we can, and we have a lot to learn, and DMC works really hard at this business forward strategy so we can keep, and in fact, I mentioned an issue I saw downtown yesterday. For our businesses, we have to have this construction going on, but we also have to make sure that those businesses have, people can access them, that we're not progressing so fast that we are unwittingly taking parking spaces away from a business where it's their only place for people to pull up in front of their business. We have to really think about those things, and we are moving forward. I agree with the comments that were made. I'm interested in this concept of some of our buildings that maybe, as we've learned, we don't need as much office space, or all the industry is learning that we don't need as much space, perhaps moving ahead. I do know, though, a lot of employees really want to get back to work. They don't want to be in their homes. So I think it's going to be a mixed response to this. But if we do have some space available, can it be converted into housing at a more reasonable cost than rebuilding something from scratch? And I think that's something we really need to look at our businesses downtown. Maybe it's only a floor of a building. Maybe it's 2 floors of a building. But let's look at that and take advantage of what we may be seeing with some freed up space moving ahead. And of course, transit's important. And the last point that and we're going to be moving ahead with that. And I appreciate both Jim and Paul's comments about that. And the last thing I want to say is a lot of our businesses, of course, are struggling with COVID. DMC has been very active in trying to help people find solutions. They've been part of the team that the city's been working on, the Chamber, Ready, RDA. It's really hard because our hearts break when we see local businesses that aren't doing well. And I'm not sure everybody realizes that. And well, they have to. None of us want any business in town to close down. We want to help them get through it. And DMC has been part of that, helping. What can we do to keep those businesses strong? And I will tell you, I hope anybody that's listening, and I know we've got 50 some people on the line, if you have not watched the webinars that DMC has pulled together, not just this one we've been talking about most recently, but some of the other ones prior to that, they are worth watching. There's wonderful information on there for all of us to know, to understand what's happening in the world beyond our own square footage, that particularly when we're at home, what's really happening and what are some strategies that we can do moving forward. There's excellent information. And I would just say other organizations like the Chamber have also held really good programs for businesses in town. So just for those of you on the board, take a minute if you haven't watched the DMC programs to spend some time looking at them. I think they were very informative and interesting. And for the community at large, I also would recommend doing that, and know that we are doing everything we can, not just as DMC, but as a community, to really support these businesses as we recover. It's going to be a tough go. We all need to work together, and I think we can see good outcomes. But thank you so much for the presentation today.
Great. Council President Staver?
Yes, I just wanted to add a couple of quick comments. You'll notice that the council did approve a resolution in support of the next 5-year plan back in October. And I realize that's a legal or a legislative formality, if you will. But I will say that it was endorsed unanimously and enthusiastically. I think the city of Rochester continues to firmly believe in DMC and what it can accomplish. We've seen some great successes so far. We are looking forward with great anticipation to the next chapter. I think, as the mayor touched on, we understand that there are many people suffering and businesses, and I think we're all trying to address those aspects as best we can. But I think it's also incumbent upon us as leaders to be looking ahead. We will get through this. We will turn the corner. And I think it's just imperative that we stay on point and that we continue in what we're trying to accomplish with DMC, because it will, perhaps even more than we anticipated, be a positive for our community as we continue forward. So I'm very enthusiastic. The city council is enthusiastic as we move forward, and we will get through this, and we'll be a better community for it.
Great, thank you. Member Wheelock, I've seen your hand up.
Well, I feel like several of you have actually already provided the endorsement and the support for some of the concepts included in here, so I won't repeat that actually, but consider that emphasized. The only curiosity I have is just monitoring vacancy rates for office space, for hotel rooms, and I'm assuming that between the city, the county, and the DMC, we have access to relevant information, but that might be good information to track over a period of time to help inform our thinking about opportunities and priorities.
Good. By the way, I appreciate your comment about not repeating what was said before you, but I hope you don't break the tradition of every public body having everybody repeat what has been said before them. So be a traditionalist, Pam. I wanted to, do I see any other comments from members? Okay, I want to first off finish this off by just saying how much I appreciate this work as well. It's really, really exceptional work. And I think if you look back about a year or two, there was discussion about this process and what it would cost. And am I back?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Discussion about this process and what it would cost. And fast forward now to this point, we've brought this in for significantly less than we projected. And we did not only a long-term update, but we also did a real deep dive into what's going to happen with COVID in it. So it's sort of like that old Target expression, expect more and pay less. We did that. I think that's a good thing. And part of the reason that was possible is because we didn't just stop planning from the beginning and then start planning again. There's been planning all the way through, and I think that's important. I have just one detail question and then a couple of quick comments. Could I turn to the HRNA folks? There's a number in there about the downtown being 1% of the total land in Rochester, but 14% of the tax base. Have you tracked that number from the beginning of DMC?
I think, and Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that is Joe Minicozzi's stat from Urban 3.
So, Mr. Chair, That came from the other consulting firm, Urban 3, so Aaron isn't as equipped to answer that question. Yes, we do have, I can't answer you how much that has changed, but we would have access to that information, absolutely.
Yeah. Can you bring that back in another meeting? Because one of the things we want to do is to have the increased development in downtown lift burden off homeowners' taxes, and we want to just track that. A couple of points on this that that really rang to me. One is I wanted us to think just a little bit about that office point, that office vacancy point. And that is a tough pill to swallow for somebody who owns an office building, and we need to be cognizant of that. From our vantage point, there is a upside to that downside, and here's what it is. That one of the things that I think is important in this is to not outrun what the market can absorb. And I think we thankfully had all this investment, and property values were going up, and that's great for lots of reasons, but it was making it tougher for us to attract people from around the region and from around the country who may want to be part of this, but had the expense of office space, the rent was getting to be really high. So one of the things that happens when you get more vacancy is prices don't go up as much. The building owners get hungrier, they become more aggressive. And just from what we're trying to do, that's not the worst thing in the world, not long-term, but for a period of time, for this to be a really great time for somebody to move from around the region, or even better from around the country, and say, this is the time to get into Rochester. So I think we should just be mindful of that. I also want us to go back to what was the #1 recommendation, which is to support local businesses. And that's why I'm really so pleased that that Lisa and Patrick and the team got in early on that. And I think, Mayor, your points about how heartbreaking it is when you see a local business struggling, the more we can be in a partnership about that. And you as a mayor and the city leadership know that you have an additional resource that most other mayors don't have right now when their hearts are breaking about local businesses. Turn to us and challenge us to do as much as we can to help those local businesses. It's really critical right now, and it's unfortunate that we're not getting a stimulus bill yet out of the federal government. So we can play that role for Rochester in a way that can't be played in other places. So challenge us to do that. That should be our #1 goal right now. Other thoughts on this? Jim Campbell.
Well, the one thing that sort of excites me is the thought of thinking about economic diversification in the city. It's so dominated by one player. Sometimes we lose sight of other players that really strengthen the economy because of the diversification. I'm thinking that, maybe we should sort of think beyond the city limits of Rochester. I mean, I think about McNellius up at Dodge Center, which is just a few miles away. Maybe need to think a little bit more in the region around Rochester, because those are incredible assets to the diversification of southeastern Minnesota. And I think our focus tends to be, in Olmsted County and in Rochester, but there may be some adjacencies here of diversification that are really important for us to not lose sight of.
It's such an interesting point, Jim, and we've thought about this before, because our sphere of influence is very contracted, but we care about the other areas. There is something pretty interesting in this idea of remote work, that every day the Mayo Clinic draws people from around all of southern Minnesota into downtown Rochester, and they eat lunch there, they go to restaurants there. A portion of that group will not be coming into downtown Rochester. That's tough for what we do. But the growth of Mayo, if those people are in other towns, there are restaurants, dry cleaners, et cetera, in all of these small towns, and they'll be supporting those services. It's a little bit of cold comfort for what we're trying to do in Rochester, but it accelerates our impact on all of southern Minnesota. So I think that is a point. So Kathleen, do you want to read the resolution, and we'll now take a vote on it?
Mr. Chair, the resolution is before everyone, and so I can certainly read it if people would like, but the resolution.
Why don't you just reground us?
Thank you. The resolution is required by, well, the 5-year update is required by statute. And we have met the requirements of holding a public hearing, of obtaining city approval. The city amended this, I want to point this out, that the city amended the plan when it sent it back to the DMCC for approval. And it was primarily, as Patrick pointed out, the HRNA work, I believe. And so you have an amended and approved plan in front of you from the city council. The public hearing has been had. One of the requirements of the statute is that we had to comport with findings of particular elements of the statute, and that is set forth in the resolution. And I believe that we have, well, I know that we have complied with all the requirements of the statute. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions about it or proceed as you would like.
Why don't you proceed to the roll call?
All right, so we need a motion and a second.
I would move, Mr. Chair.
And I see Member Campbell seconds.
Second.
All right, thank you. And Beer. We can come back to Jim. Campbell.
Aye.
Doherty.
Aye.
Norton.
Aye.
Ryback.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
Beer. Jim, you're on mute. Would you like to vote on this? All right, Mr. Chair, you have 7 ayes and 0 nays.
Very good. Thank you very much. And thanks, team
I
members.
think Jim is back. I'm sorry to interrupt. I do think
That's
Jim
okay.
is.
Jim Beer, would you like to vote on this?
Yeah, I'll vote on it. My buttons wouldn't work there, so I
All right, Beer votes aye. Mr. Chair, 8-0.
Thank you very much. Okay, good. Why don't I turn it back to Lisa and Patrick for project updates?
All right, so we are now going to move into the heart of the city update. So we talked a little bit about investments in public space and sewers and streets, and here's a perfect example of doing just that. Heart of the city, as you know, has been moving along quite rapidly and at a very good pace, thanks to your direction as well about getting in the ground now during this pandemic. And a few updates. The construction update, of course, is we're planning to complete the Peace Plaza project or Heart of the City project in July of 2021. Construction continues. We've had a good season in terms of weather. We mentioned earlier our business forward strategy. We've got Josh and Jamie and our team both working very hard on helping businesses with the business forward strategy, which if you remember, we talked about helping businesses during construction. It's always a difficult time. Then the pandemic landed, so we had to do some pivoting on that front. Everything from sound and dust mitigation to safety to construction engagement, wayfinding, communications. And that's been very well received, and we're keeping those businesses connected to us. Chateau Theater, our beloved Chateau Theater, just like other theaters across the country, is on pause. And we think the best time to bring it back is about the same time we open up this beautiful new space called Heart of the City and see if we can find some successes there. And then we'll talk a little bit in a moment about this redevelopment concept that's been in our original plan with the arcade toward the end of Peace Plaza. So I want to show you the pretty picture so that you all remember what you approved. So this is what it will look like, and it's getting so very close. This is going to be beautiful space. If you remember years ago, we had research that people were asking for this space to change. They wanted a gathering space. They wanted a place that felt and looked healthy. They wanted an interesting place with art and water features. They wanted trees. They wanted seating. They wanted it to feel more plaza-like. And you'll see all of that in front of you here. Addition of trees, we'll have some great seating elements and this water feature. So the construction schedule in and of itself is 2nd Street happened this summer, and it was crazy and wild, and it is now complete. So it's moving along. First Avenue South and First Avenue North, as I said, we are completing right now. We're continuing to do the construction work. And the construction teams have been amazing. They've bent over backwards to help businesses with access and try to get their work done at the same time. And they've tried to move it along very, very quickly. And then Peace Plaza, of course, we intend to complete 2021. Some of you haven't been around, so we wanted to show you a few photos of what things are starting to look like. This is a before picture of First Avenue. And if you take a look at this photo, this is what it looked like before you all approved our change. And you'll notice the very narrow sidewalks and very limited space for public access and public activity. And here's what it's starting to look like today. So you'll see the sidewalks have changed in terms of the surfaces, the trees are coming in. I think people were really surprised to see how wide and how much space that we actually created by this initiative, and it will be curbless, so it'll be very plaza-like, which is of course what we intended and what people were asking for. Here's a view, of course, from 2nd Street down toward the Wells Fargo project. Again, things will start to be wider. The right photo in this case is the old and the left photo is the new. Peace Plaza is the next view, I believe. Yep. So the left is what Peace Plaza looked like just a few short months ago. And to the right is we are full on this one. You'll see the scrim, the water feature is down the center. So we're working on that. We're putting in the heated sidewalk system, which you all approved not so long ago. This is going to be an amazing space that people are asking for. So I just wanted you to see those photos because you all are working from your home as well, and you actually can see the activity that's happening. And it's palpable, and it will be completed by this summer for sure. And so that's a good time. We hope the world will open up again, and we are going to be ready. Now I'm going to turn it over to Patrick to talk a little bit about what I mentioned earlier, is this access or this arcade-like effort that's in front of us. If you all remember, our first development plan actually had, if you're looking at this slide to the right, you'll see the word shops. It actually had us making sure that we created a line of sight from Peace Plaza, or actually we said from the Gonda building, all the way down to Civic Center. That would mean we'd have to blow through this building, because right now you actually literally are stopped by a brick wall. And so we believe that the experience can flow through that, and we can create that line of sight and experience. And so we're just starting to tap into those discussions right now, along with some discussions in the Michael's space. And so Patrick, if you want to just give the board a brief update on what we're starting to explore.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Mr. Chair, members of the board, there is no ask or request an action item in front of you with respect to this report or this update. It's simply to let you know of conversations that are underway between the city and ourselves and the property owner. Again, this image captures in part what Lisa is describing, which is the connective tissue that is being created both with Peace Plaza, Discovery Walk in blue here that will take you ultimately to Soldiers Field and down to the river, connecting with in yellow, the rapid transit line. So you can see that as part of our connective tissue. And then this green corridor that showing up in green, connecting the Civic Center to the Gonda building. Again, part of our vision for the connective tissue necessary or desired in the community. The current conversation active conversation is with the property owner of the Galleria and 15 South Broadway. So it's really this very focal area. What's the next phase, or what's the next step towards achieving the vision that has been expressed? As Lisa said, current conditions, on this image you see sort of the obstacle that you face on Peace Plaza on the west side of that building. And then on the east side of the building, again, sort of the obstacle that one might experience as we're trying to create this connective tissue through the Galleria. As I said, we are in active but early conversations, and we will continue to do that with the city and with the property owner. We are looking at cost considerations and potential fund phasing options. And ultimately, if we're successful, we would be bringing an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, both to City Council and DMC for consideration. I'm hopeful and optimistic that we will be in a position to bring something forward in February. That's our target. Can't promise that, but that's our working hypothesis. So, and that's really what I wanted to put on the table for the board's awareness and familiarity. And again, these are active conversations that whether we haven't reached any conclusion or actual recommendation at this phase.
And members, by the way, when slides are up and you want to talk, put it in the chat and we'll monitor that. And if I don't pick it up, just yell out. I just wanted to say a couple things real quickly. As you start to lay this out, it's getting to be incredibly exciting to think about someone who is maybe coming to the clinic, somebody from any part of the state or further away who's coming in to discover Rochester, or just somebody who hasn't been there in a while who may live nearby. When you come in, you have to look for cues for what's the walk you want to take. So we're beginning to get this whole vocabulary of experiences: Discovery Walk, Peace Plaza, hopefully the river now. Exactly. All of this is really connecting so much. And as you showed those slides, you really did a good job of pointing out the fact that it's all starting to come together, and then kaboom, we have this moment at Peace Plaza where there's this wall. Thankfully, there's a glass door, et cetera. So I don't exactly know the solution, but I think we know the challenge. And I think we should begin to think about how do we articulate what is this walk, the kind of a bad visual representation of this, but a good literal one is the one in Boston, the Freedom Trail, where you just follow the red brick and it takes you around. Indianapolis has its really wonderful bike connector that does that. When we talk about connecting to neighborhoods, the idea that, wow, this is a very unique place where you can walk from the top medical institution in the world down to the river and then into residential neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera. This moment where Peace Plaza meets that building is probably our deepest challenge on that. So again, I don't know the solution, but I certainly know the problem, and I'm glad you're working on it. Other comments on this? I see two in the chat. Let me see here. Pam, we like one of the slides sent to board members, which I think is great. Jim Beer would like that too. Any other comments, members?
Mr. Chair, can we actually just go back to that previous slide for just a moment? Number 9. I'm just struck by all of the green space along the river on the east side of the Civic Center, and yet what from a pedestrian experience, what an obstacle monolithic building like the Civic Center is. You have to traverse a great big property to get back to that space. And I just would encourage staff and from not only DMC, but from the city as well and the county to think about the bus rapid transit and what happens. I mean, the closest access is really at that intersection right before you cross over the bridge there, or I'm just wondering about that route where the bus rapid transit is versus kind of the quote unquote green route. Yeah. And how to really get the most out of that space there. And maybe we'll talk more about it when we're going to talk about Waterfront as well. I don't know, but it just always seems like that's such a hidden gem that it's hard to really take advantage of the proximity to the river, the open space, because of the lack of ease from a pedestrian standpoint of getting back there. So We don't need to
That's a-
discuss it, but I just want to make that observation.
I'm really glad you raised that because, you know, it also fits in with the issue of where the former Bloom project was. If you could maybe put your arrow on that. We do have this opportunity to open that. It's right at, you know, that moment when you're at the library looking at the Civic Center. How do you know what, unless we get somebody up in a drone, they don't know that. So Mayor, I just saw that you had a comment there. I'm sorry. Could you just raise that?
I'm not sure, do you want to wait on the waterfront discussion?
Yeah,
Or
why
is
don't we do
this-
that? That's a good point.
Okay, we can wait on that. The other one I just wanted to mention was the Discovery Walk issue.
Yeah.
I think I'm really excited about Discovery Walk. It's been for me one of the, up to now, and the Riverfront's the other one of the key points in connecting downtown to the broader community and making it something that really the community will take advantage of and draw people downtown, particularly that live out in that section. So I think that's really a key point. I do want to just mention that, you know, as we do this, we need to remember that the city will have to do maintenance and upkeep of that. So I think at some point as we move along, there's the build out, but we also need to talk about operations. If we're putting some kind of beyond just a road, we're using different materials and putting different kind of structures in there. So just to be aware that we should really flesh that out as we move ahead.
Really good point. Okay, seeing nothing more on this, no other comments. Okay, so should we move now to Discovery Walk, I guess is next, am I right?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Thank
We
you.
have a resolution here too. So just to set the stage here, we're going to do we want to approve the design development for Discovery Walk. So Lisa,
Correct.
take it away.
Yes, thank you. So we've got two quick updates, and I'll introduce one of my colleagues to give those updates. We'll give you an update on Discovery Square, or 1 Discovery Square. You know, that's about 90% leased, and 2 Discovery Square has broken ground in September. So it's a great message to the market that we are moving forward in our sort of economic development gem. And then we'll talk a bit about Discovery Walk. I'd like to introduce Chris Shad, whom I believe has been in front of our board before. Chris is our business development director related to Discovery Square, who's going to walk us through these slides.
Good morning, everybody. Chair Ryback and the board, I'm pleased to be here today to give you this update. We'll start with a high-level update on the sub-district as an entity. Economic development, we continue to have discussions with businesses about locating in Discovery Square. We've always framed our value proposition at the top of the list was access and proximity to Mayo Clinic. And that value proposition, we feel that was validated in our success in leasing up 1 Discovery Square. And it was a hard and fun and challenging process to get to that point. I think with the quite a few months ago, it seems like forever ago, but when Mayo was announcing the rollout of the Mayo Clinic platform activities, that further highlighted the value of partnership with Mayo. And now most recently with Mayo Clinic's really highly visible leadership in COVID response, it really has showcased that value proposition significantly, we believe. And judging from recent surge in interest in Discovery Square, we've been taking a lot of calls and having a lot of meetings recently. It seems clear that the really forward-looking businesses and organizations, both nationally and internationally, they see this as a time to forge ahead with new opportunities. So we have a lot of discussions with a lot of businesses across multiple technology verticals. We can't really say much about it at this point, but we like where we are going. I think the key takeaway messages around economic development, one is we've talked about the reality of existing office space coming available and the shift to remote working. While that we know that's a reality, we know that businesses that we've been recruiting have moved into Discovery Square, not necessarily in 1 Discovery Square. That reality does not fundamentally change our value proposition, but it does create new opportunity. And so we intend to see how we can take advantage of that. And the second message I would like to convey is that we inspire confidence with the businesses that we talk to, and they're moving into Discovery Square when it means they're moving into an ecosystem that's part of a larger strategic initiative. And so this isn't just a place for them to put their business, but it's part of a larger effort. And they find that inspiring in our conversations with them. Discovery Square 2 construction has begun. Tenant recruitment is underway, as I mentioned. Entrepreneurship activities are really coming to the forefront now as we enter into phase 2 of the DMC plan. We've been able to bring businesses here, and now it's time for us to intensify our efforts around entrepreneurship, and these partnerships with Medical Alley and Collider and Mayo and Ready and other organizations is really important, as well as our participation in the Southeast Minnesota E1 network, which is part of the Launch MN DEED initiative that just celebrated their 1-year anniversary yesterday, actually. There are 3 new residential buildings that are up and leasing space, and they have retail spaces that are now complete and ready for leasing. And then Discovery Walk is underway, and I think the bulk of the conversation here now will be about Discovery Walk. If we move on to the next slide, please. So
before we move on to Discovery Walk, could you know, one of the things that we just had this discussion about office space, are we correct in hearing that because because of Mayo's visibility with COVID, Discovery Square is really going to be counter-cyclical, that it actually is a really good time to be leasing up that space?
Well, we see a lot of interest, and we presume in part it's because of what Mayo's performance in COVID and of course Mayo's reputation longstanding. We've been having a lot of meetings recently and a lot of conversations across a lot of sectors, some of which we believe is generated by Mayo's activities in COVID response. It creates a lot of opportunity. And
I think it'd be fair to say, Chris, the other dynamic that's occurring is that the first set of tenants in Discovery Square are themselves becoming attractors to
Yes.
other businesses. And you may want to just say something about the multiplier effect that's happening.
yeah, that's a good point, Patrick. Thank you. That's always been part of the strategy, is attract the attractors, and those businesses that have moved in are having conversations with their partners, 1, and 2, some of those businesses, they're seeing the value of being there such that they might consider what their footprint looks like in the future, as well as growing because of growing relationships. So I think there's multiple multiplying activities and effects that are taking place there.
That's great news. Okay.
Related to Discovery Walk, we do have a request for the board here today to approve the design and authorize completion of the construction documents and bidding.
Could I just make just to make a distinction for clarity? Oh, go ahead, Bill. Chris, I guess you're probably, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, you'll catch it if I miss it, but we make a point of coming to the board at key milestone points of all of our projects, and this is a point where the design documentation is complete, and we're seeking approval from the board on this. We will be back to the board again prior to construction as we get the construction documents put together. Is that what you wanted to cover, Patrick?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is just a high-level view of the timeline. This is not a timeline that began yesterday. This began back in 2015 with the development plan being adopted. And as a group and as a community and as an organization, we've been working our way through this timeline. We find ourselves now in November, seeking board approval November of this year, knowing that, and we anticipate going out to bid in the spring of next year and construction beginning next year, should it all go according to plan. So there was there has been a lot of community input along the way in what Discovery Walk will look like. And this slide is just highlighting the key takeaways from some of the early community engagement that took place about this feeling like a park and being flexible, promoting health and wellness, and we can all read those ourselves. We are pleased to say that we now have a design that lives up to the expectations of our community and our board. And there's three reasons why that's the case. And I'll be touching on this in a minute, but we've had input from underrepresented community members via the community co-designers, and I'll talk in more detail about that in a minute. We have 3 local artists that are embedded within the design team, and we've had regular touch points with business and property owners adjacent to the project site. So there's been a lot of effort in getting input from the community. Maybe jumped ahead a little bit, but if we could go to slide 6, please.
Right.
Yeah. So this is a high-level view of how this fits in, and if we put this into the context of the the prior slide showing the Heart of the City project and that the new initiative that Patrick was referring to. This is where we're connecting the heart of the city to the Zumbro River by way of Soldiers Field Park. This ultimately is 5 blocks to get us into the Soldiers Field Park. There is some elevation change. The highest elevation point is on the 400 block, which is where the One Discovery Square building is. And so it really creates this nice flow of movement north to south along 2nd Avenue. If we could go to the next slide, please. This is where we just a few comments about our community co-designers. This was an intentional effort in partnership with the University of Minnesota, and Kevin Bright in our office led this effort to bring people from historically underrepresented communities into the process of helping us understand how this space can and should operate to be more inclusive, both from minority populations, physical disabilities, and from a health perspective. And the initial work was so effective that members of this group actually became part of the design team, and they are embedded into the design team going forward. And it's safe to say that the design and the functionality of the space has been fundamentally improved because of their participation. And we see this as a model for our projects going forward. The community co-designers have been incorporated into the transit project as an example. And we would like to see this replicated in other projects as well. We also, going on to the next slide, we have 3 local artists that are now embedded within the team, within the design team: Zoe Janelle, Sophia Che, and Ayub Haji Omar. Zoe and Sophia are immigrants to Rochester, and Ayub comes from a family of immigrants. And they, as I mentioned, they are embedded right into the design team, and we've had some early peeks at the work that they're envisioning, and we're going to learn more over the coming month or so as their work emerges. It's exciting to see this and see how they're incorporating it right from the beginning. It's not just a statue plopped down in the middle of the walk. It's actually embedded within the design, and that is significantly different approach to incorporating art that we're seeing, and it's been enlightening to see how that can be so effective. So real briefly, the design features, this is the meat of what is within the design documents. On the left-hand side are what we refer to as the base design features. So these are the things that the construction package will need to include. And you can read them all there. It includes anything from ADA accessibility to snow melt and art and lighting and traffic calming design. So those on the left will be included in the base package, if you will. On the right are what we would refer to as optional design features. Maybe in the past you've heard the term add-alts, but these are the things that have come out of our conversations with the community co-designers, the members of the community, the business community, about what else might also be important. So weather shelters along the way, snow melt in some of the plazas and garden walks as opposed to the main walkways, extension into Soldiers Field North, and some utility upgrades. So we will get bids, or we will get estimates, I'll say, not bid, but we will get estimates on those elements as well, but they would be considered optional, and it will be up to the board to make decisions on which of those they would incorporate into the final package or not. The next slide, please. So here we'll, rather than stepping through block by block in the interest of time, we'll just showcase one of the blocks. This would be the 400 block. So this is the block between 4th and 5th Street, southeast, or southwest, sorry. This is where One Discovery Square is located, and Discovery Square 2 is being constructed. So north is to the right, and in the upper right, that would be the plaza space just outside of One Discovery Square for orientation. And you'll see that although it looks like 2nd Avenue is actually a street, it is actually part of the plaza space. It's all at street level. So you can think of the imagery that you saw from Heart of the City as inspiration for what this will look like based on this design. So curbless streets. The traffic is still running north-south, but it's pushed way over to the eastern edge of this, and in what is now currently street space will become this green space with a weather shelter, perhaps, if the board decides that is is necessary, plus some cafe seating, some sidewalk space, some what's called cliff rooms, so space where you can step off of the walkway, that's the bottom left corner, where you can step off the walkway into these sort of semi-private kinds of conversation spaces that people aspire to have. Lots of trees, lots of green space, lots of gathering space, and shelter from the weather. And so if the 2 slides ago, it was a bulleted list of what the design looks like, and if the previous slide was imagery of what the space looks like, this takes a look at the space more from a numbers perspective. And some things to highlight here. Existing landscape area in these 4 blocks stretch is about 7,000 square feet, and this design increases that to 38,700 square feet. We go from 39 trees to 313 trees. Social space, which we've learned is really important these days, and adequate social space increases from 2,000 square feet to 38,000 square feet. The bulk of that being on the 300 block, which we did not showcase here, but a small plaza space on the 300 block. And then seating, going from, we have 65 linear feet of seating on those blocks right now. So there's not a lot of place to sit. And we increased that to 1,300 linear feet of seating space. And then as somebody whose focus is on business development and entrepreneurship, and Discovery Square being that place of that economic diversification, we currently right now can host 3, maybe 4 vendors along the length of Discovery Walk, that being food trucks running off of their diesel generators. And we anticipate being able to host up to 35 vendors in this space, all on the electrical grid rather than running generators. And we see this really as a platform, being able to use this space as a platform for small businesses, business startups, launches, and especially for underrepresented communities or community members where they can start their businesses, minority business owners and the like. So as a business owner, a business director, business development director, this is a piece that is particularly exciting to me because it aligns with the mission of Discovery Square. So bringing it back to the request action, that's a high-level summary, I guess, of the design of Discovery Walk, and what we have before you for consideration is approving that design and authorizing completion of the construction documents.
Okay, any comments, members? It's absolutely wonderful work. I just love the detail you've looked at to do this to an inclusive process, and so many other things, including that point about the electrical grid. Really nice work. Seeing no other comments, Kathleen, I'm going to ask you to read the roll, after which I'll ask folks for a motion and a second, and then we'll call the roll. So Kathleen, could you read the resolution?
Mr. Chair, the resolution is in the packet, and as has been referenced, it asks the board to approve the design development documents that are on file, and to authorize the next phase of the work, which includes the construction documents. The actual final project and award of any bid would come back to this board for final approval. So that is the resolution that is before you.
Okay.
So
And Mr. Chair, I'd move approval.
Moved, Peter, second, Wheelock. Thank you very much. Kathleen, you want to call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair, sorry, I got Wheelock for the motion. Who is the second?
Beer moved, Wheelock second.
Okay, thank you. All right. Beer.
Aye, found the button.
Campbell.
Aye.
Doherty.
Aye.
Norton.
Aye.
Ryback.
Aye.
Staver.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, that's 8 yeas and 0 nays.
Very good,
And
thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would just say my comments were kind of premature to this, and I just want to reiterate, as we move along with this, we have to really have some good discussion about, we do a lot of planning here, but what's the impact on the city's budget moving ahead? And so I think this is a great start, and when we hit that next phase, when they bring ideas back, we may need to delve into that just a little bit more, or in between, so we make sure we're working in conjunction with the city staff for ongoing upkeep and operations.
Very good. I see members Campbell and Wheelock have questions. Campbell first.
Well, I'm a broken record on this one, but I hope that somehow whether it's Mayo, it's probably Mayo, thinking about extending the subway system from Hilton or whatever that south location is to Discovery Square. I mean, it's great to have the Discovery Walk outside, but it would really be nice to be able to extend the subway system to those two office buildings. I hope that's not forgotten.
Member Wheeler?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank the staff. This is clearly transformational and will really be highly effective, I believe, in linking the amenities around the park area and the southern edge of the downtown with the core downtown. And even just seeing the slides, it's really exciting. So thank you very much.
It really is. I mean, I just sort of think back to an area that was surface parking lots is now going to be one of the centers in the world of medical discovery, and it's a people scaled place. I'm very, very excited about it. Okay, I think we are now, we moved, but we didn't call the roll, right? Am I right?
Mr. Chair, the roll has been called. It passed 8-0.
Got it, okay. All right, so now we're going to move on to transportation, and let me turn that back to you, Lisa.
Yep, great. We've got two other updates, and then we've got the Mayo Clinic update. We want to give you an update on transportation, and I believe Aaron Parrish is with us and Patrick Sieb. Not sure if Aaron's joining or not, but Patrick, I'll turn that over to you. And then the second one we're going to give an update on is a project, an apartment project. So Patrick, why don't you just go from one to the next?
Yeah, let's just jump in. There is no action being requested of the board today, and yes, indeed, Aaron Parrish will join me for a brief update on the rapid transit project. As a reminder, we have developed a transportation initiative that anticipates over the next 20 years continued growth of the need and use of our downtown. And we have a whole range of approaches that we are applying to help people get into and move about the downtown. The one that we have spent the most time in discussion here is the rapid transit circulator. And I know people on this in this meeting are curious to know how we're progressing on that application. And Aaron, perhaps I could just invite you to make a few comments. Aaron Parrish, a deputy city administrator, and really the lead person, he and his staff, on moving this project forward.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Chair, members of the board, I'm just really happy to report that we continue with our strong momentum on the bus rapid transit project. Jarrett Hubbard, our project manager, and the SRF team are in partnership with the co-designers, as was mentioned earlier, have been facilitating an amazing design process and community engagement approach. I'm happy to report that we reached an important milestone for the project last week, and that the Federal Transit Administration gave us a determination that we have a categorical exclusion for our environmental review, which is a responsible, detailed, and an efficient level of review. But it is the review that lets us proceed most quickly with the project, while still doing a good job of reviewing the environmental and historic impacts associated with it. So really proud with the momentum. We do have a couple of community engagement opportunities even this week that are going on with station design. The community can expect to be talking about our approach to branding in the next couple of months in terms of how the line is branded, as well as to continue the conversation on traffic related impacts. With that, I will also invite the board into the process. Over the next few months, we really need to spend some time thinking about our legislative advocacy strategy, and we'll be reaching out to members of the board and the council to really bring that strategy to life, because we feel like you can have an important impact in that space. And so we look forward to the continued partnership there. But all is well.
Referring to the federal legislative strategy.
Absolutely. Yep. But with that, everything is going very well, and we appreciate all the support that's been extended.
one of the things I just want to put a marker down on this is that I think one of the things that's going to really help this become real to folks is when we begin the discussion of what type of vehicle. And I think that's an issue that we should be bringing forward sooner rather than later, so that people are able to understand these vehicles may perhaps load faster, can move in a different way, and can have the excitement that I think we wanted to do with that. So that's something that I'd love to see kept high in visibility. Other comments, folks? Okay, moving on.
Thank you. Gonna switch screens here. So the next item that we are going to report on is giving you a look at a project that we have been, where we've been working with a developer. And to do that, I'm going to introduce Kevin Bright, our Director of Sustainability and part of our economic development team. He has been, along with the city, lead contact person with the developer for this project. And again, we're not asking you for anything today other than feedback or commentary or insight that you would like to offer as we continue our dialogue with this developer. So with that, Kevin, and maybe Kevin, you could grab control of the screen so I don't have to try to guess. I did poorly with Chris.
Fair enough. There we go. So I think I can do that now. Thanks everyone. So as is customary, or how our approach has been for past projects, we'd like to share some initial information about the brick apartment project here today, and then likely have an application for funding approval coming in February. So a little bit of background information about the project itself. I may need some help advancing the slide. I think I requested it, but I don't know if it's, there we go. Just wanted to point to where this project is in space. So the brick site is located in yellow there. It's at the corner of Broadway Avenue and Civic Center Drive in downtown Rochester. Immediately south is kind of the Mayo campus, and to the southeast is the Mayo Civic Center, where we typically host our DMCC board meetings. It is an infill redevelopment site, so it is currently nothing is on this site. It's kind of a parking lot of sorts. And Broadway Avenue is slated to become a transit-oriented development corridor in the future. So this will be a high amenity transit route and stop in the future for the city. The next slide shows a quick schematic of the project itself, its interaction with kind of the roadways. And also in this diagram, you can see kind of what the future will hold for the North Broadway site as well. So the city of Rochester has been looking at accommodating multiple changes along the North Broadway roadway. So to accommodate multiple modes, provide kind of safe travel for all users. And this diagram, I think, does a great job showing how the building would look, but also how the future of the North Broadway roadway would look as well. Quick development overview, approximately 180 apartment units, a good amount of commercial and retail space, parking's being accommodated within the building. As I pointed out, the pedestrian integration with the North Broadway site is being considered and worked along with the city teammates in order to make sure that that's being accounted for. So the kind of the future of the roadway is being considered as part of the design. One of the more exciting projects, and why we're excited about it too, is the mixed income housing approach that this project is incorporating. And I'll give a little bit more detail about that in a couple of slides. From a tenant amenity standpoint, so next slide, please. Fitness center, there's some rooftop gathering space. Kind of the third bullet on here is, I think, is interesting. Just in the times we're living in, the pandemic, they're providing some library and flexible work from home space within the building itself as well. And this is kind of the first that I've seen of like a design approach being incorporated into a development project that's responding to the pandemic times. And then some outdoor garden space and climate controlled parking as well. As it relates to the DMC goals, some of the advice and insight that we got from the DMC board in the past was to be more surgical in our approach as it relates to affordable housing. So the mixed income approach, I think, is accomplishing that, and we'll give a breakdown of what the area median income and rental levels are in the next slide here. But other goals that, sorry, but other goals we're excited about is the incorporation of workforce housing. It is within the DMC zone, but also the transit-oriented development zone that the city has created. It is being constructed on a blighted site, so there's some neighborhood stabilization, revitalization that's incorporated in the project that we're excited about. And then finally, we're in conversation with the design team and project team to incorporate the sustainability standards that the city and DMC have passed to ensure that those are outcomes that are being incorporated into the project. As it relates to the rental aspect, around 20% of the units will have rent levels around 50% area median income, another 20% of the units at 60% area median income, and then the remainder of the 60% of the units at or below 80% of area median income. This is kind of in direct response to a lot of the affordable housing studies that have been undertaken as part of the transit studies and the transit work being led by the city, as well as the Maxfield study that was updated with community partners, the county and city kind of leading that effort, and the DMC also participating. So these are basically underserved areas for rents within the community, and we know we have a lot more units that need to be provided at these rent levels moving forward, and this is kind of a good first step in that we're kind of hitting multiple needs with one project, which we're excited about. And the last slide here just shows kind of the overall schematic and how it would look if you're looking at the project from the east to kind of show how it interacts with the roadway, but you get a good look at the rooftop space and kind of other amenities associated with the project. Today, we do have a few members of the development team and the design team to help answer questions, but if there are any initial questions from the board, we're happy to field those.
Great. I want to just start off by saying thank you for giving us that more surgical approach. We've tried to unpack what is affordable housing. It is multiple different actions and multiple different levers, and you gave us that. Any other comments, members? Member Williams.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just thrilled to see this coming forward. It's exactly the kind of thing. It's on a transit corridor. It's got a mix of incomes. I'm hopeful that they can really achieve this, having 50%, 60%, and 80% housing in the building. And fabulous if there's a role that DMC can play in this. I would love to see it. I had thought that we weren't going to be able to be participating in projects. So more to come on that, I'm sure, but just really thrilled to see. This is exactly, these are worker bees, right? Family of four earning $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. These are worker bees, and my guess is the demand for these units will be literally out the door when they get this, when they start leasing this up. So bravo.
Your comments? One thing, by the way, just it seems like a small point, but one of the observations I think anybody who's on Zoom or anything else has these days is that one of the biggest flags of income disparity is a background. People working in their kitchens, two people working in a place is very different than people who have multiple rooms to spread out. I just mention that because I think that very subtle point of having workspace for what's going to be an increased mobile area is also going to increasingly be something we're going to look for housing that's affordable and supportive in that way. Okay, seeing no other questions on that, we don't have any action on that, but thank you very much. It's really exciting to have that. We want to move on now to welcome our partner from Mayo Clinic, Jeff Bolton, who's the Chief Administrative Officer at Mayo. Jeff's been with us many times before. We're especially anticipating your comments today because we've talked about how our work needs to take into account how Mayo's workforce and future plans move forward. So we're really excited to have you here, Jeff, and thank you for coming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I do appreciate the opportunity to provide this update, but I'd like to start out by thanking the board for your vision and courage to continue investing in Rochester during this most challenging time. I'm confident with the collaboration between the state, city, county, and organizations like EDA, Rochester Downtown Alliance, the Chamber, Mayo Clinic, and many others, that Rochester will recover more rapidly than other cities across the country and come out of this experience stronger as a result of the collaborative approach that we've taken. Mayo Clinic remains committed to Minnesota, Rochester, the DMC vision, and the updated 5-year plan that you approved today. I'd like to begin my report by reviewing our overall condition. Despite the pandemic and current surge, Mayo Clinic remains in a very strong position on all metrics. It's far beyond anything imaginable in March of this year. That includes looking after our patients, maintaining our top decile quality, safety, and patient experience metrics, looking after our staff, staying true to our mission and values, ensuring that we remain a 3-shield organization, being good stewards for our finances, while also investing and accelerating our path to 2030, our Cure, Connect, and Transform priorities. We are currently experiencing the worst of the COVID-19 surge here in the Midwest. And while our practice in Rochester is being stressed by the current surge, our staff continues to handle it with agility and resilience, despite the emotional and physical drain, and also the recognition that we have some really tough weeks ahead. However, we are optimistic, given the release of effective therapeutics and the strong safety and efficacy demonstrated in phase 3 trials of the vaccine. However, in the very near term, we need to remain vigilant in terms of wearing masks, social distancing, washing our hands often, sanitizing surfaces, and not gathering in large groups. We've learned a lot over the past 8 months, including establishing protocols early on that allow us to safely manage non-COVID patients while also caring for significant numbers of COVID-19 patients and securing our supply chain. Community has been very responsive, creating safe environment for patients when they are not in facilities. As a result, patients have demonstrated their trust in Mayo Clinic by traveling to Rochester to seek the care they need for serious or complex medical conditions in spite of the pandemic. Thus, we've been able to function at a very high level during the summer and early fall. And even during the current surge, we're able to flex surgeries and procedures effectively, avoiding a significant shutdown of services as we've experienced in March and April. Practice leaders and a multitude of teams work tirelessly to create safe pathways for all of our patients, doing it in days, not weeks, including rapid expansion of virtual and face-to-face visits. While our outpatient visits and surgeries dropped to as low as 10% to 20% of normal levels in March and April, we began a rapid recovery in May and June, and since then have been equal to or exceeding last year's numbers. Despite the significant loss in 6 weeks of March and April, we are currently within 2 to 3% of our 2019 volumes. I would also note we are pulling back a bit on hospital-based surgeries right now in the midst of the current surge. In terms of our national patients, we have rebounded but remain about 15% below 2019 levels. We're confident, though, that these volumes will return following the pandemic. As we expected, given the travel limitations, our international patient volumes have declined by about 80%. However, we are maintaining strong relationships with international patients and providers through virtual visits to maintain a strong pipeline of patients once travel restrictions are lifted. I'd like to turn to discuss a little bit about our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition to preparing our practice for managing a COVID surge, Mayo Clinic leaned in to assist the state and the nation in addressing the pandemic. A sample of our efforts include the development of highly accurate diagnostic and antibody tests that were scaled through our Mayo Clinic laboratories. We served as a critical resource for the state and region very early in the pandemic, while also providing over 2 million molecular tests to patients nationwide. We led a national coalition promoting expanded access for convalescent plasma, engaging more than 13,000 physicians from 2,700 health systems, with 85,000 patients receiving convalescent plasma. We set up a COVID-19 research task force to oversee virus-related research, everything from basic science to clinical trials, and also including health disparities research. We're continuing to make significant investments in our practice over the coming years. One of the many examples is our cancer center. You may be aware that 1 in 10 patients travel to Mayo Clinic come for cancer care. We're transforming our cancer center with the goal of becoming a category of 1 when it comes to our oncology practice, research, and education. We're recruiting right now nationally for a leader, and we'll be investing significantly in both programs and facilities. We're making significant investments in our digital infrastructure, artificial intelligence, and efforts to transform healthcare with platforms. This is transforming both our in-person practice as well as our virtual practice. Our partnerships with Google and Inference are great examples, with patient care breakthroughs already coming to fruition within our own practice that will be extended out to patients globally. We're making significant investments over the next 10 years to achieve a diverse, equitable, inclusive environment for our patients and staff and our visitors. I know there's strong alignment with the city and community organizations to make the needed continued progress. Given the effective management through the pandemic, we were able to reactivate our capital investments in the Rochester campus. We're moving forward with the Anna Marie and Stephen Kellen Research Building with a focus on cancer research. The 176,000 square foot building will be part of Discovery Square Subdistrict with a budget of about $120 million. We anticipate a groundbreaking in the spring of 2021 and opening in the fourth quarter of 2023. We're continuing to work closely, as was mentioned previously, with Mortenson to recruit companies to Discovery Square 2 following the successful lease-up of Discovery Square 1. We're fully committed to working with the city on the transit villages and rapid transit. However, we also recognize the need to build a parking garage in Discovery Square Subdistrict to support Discovery Square 1 and 2, as well as the Kellen Building, with an anticipated budget of about $40 million. We're reactivating more than 100 capital projects in the Rochester campus with total budgets of more than $230 million. Longer term, we have a team in place developing plans for the smart hospital of the future. While we see significant growth in our virtual practice, people with serious or complex medical conditions will continue to need to come to Mayo Clinic for direct care. We need to ensure that we have the latest facilities and technology to attract and treat these patients. And we plan to make significant investments in upgrading and expanding facilities over the coming decades. Our Rochester-based workforce increased by 1,000 employees from 2019, now totaling 39,300 in 2020. More than 20,000 of those staff members work downtown. As you're aware, out of necessity to improve safety of our patients and our staff, we moved quickly to move administrative staff to a virtual work environment. As a result of this successful effort, we plan to have many of these staff working in a hybrid role with a mix of virtual and on-site work. For context, Our initial assessment suggests 1,500 administrative staff who previously worked downtown will move to predominantly remote work. As Mayor Norton mentioned earlier in this meeting, and others have suggested, we're evaluating the most effective ways to reactivate available space in support of growth in our three shields and attracting other businesses into the downtown from outside of Minnesota, while also taking actions to support downtown businesses. Just like to reflect on Mayo Clinic values. Crises will either create divisiveness or bring organizations together. The staff of Mayo Clinic, united by a common purpose, guided by the needs of our patients and our Mayo Franciscan values, came together in a really magnificent way during the pandemic, making personal sacrifices to ensure that Mayo Clinic would be sustained to meet the needs of our patients. Our deeply ingrained and internalized values have kept us all inspired to do the work that we know needs to be done. Please know that our values are alive and well at Mayo Clinic. In closing, I'd like to recognize the very significant contributions of Lisa Clarke to this bold plan called DMC. Lisa has been the foremost champion for DMC. She's a natural leader and collaborator, and her tireless work with community members, business partners, legislators, developers, and entrepreneurs has been essential to DMC's tremendous progress. We'll miss her, but we know that Lisa's retirement will be an active one, continuing to be an ambassador for DMC and for the region. Congratulations, Lisa, and thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Jeff. We really appreciate that, and we'll open it up for comments from the team. Could you help with those numbers? You gave such a good overview on that, but one of the things we need to get our head around is continuing to figure out how fast is Mayo going to grow and not. So you gave that number, if I remember them right, it was 1,000 more than 2019.
That's correct.
And then it's about 1,500 will not be coming back on that. As we look long-term at our projections, we base projections on your growth. How should we recalibrate what we should look for growth over the 5, et cetera, years out?
Yeah, I think it's fair to assume that we will continue to grow as an organization. The program, the Cancer Center program, is a great example. We'll be making investments to hire staff members, faculty, their research staff to populate the Kellen building as an example. So again, I think we have every intention to continue to grow in Rochester. This year, as you're well aware, we had to pause. We pulled back with temporary furloughs, but we brought everybody back, and again, we're up and running. Despite the current surge, we're running at normal capacity at this point in time.
Great. Okay. Other comments, questions from members? I do want to say you had me at Transit Village. I was very happy you made that reference. That was a member Wheelock.
Jeff, I'm just wondering if you can give us a little color commentary, if you will, about some of your vendors and partners, and a similar question about, have you noticed anything in your discussions this year about their ability or interest to continue to move forward with plans for maybe presence in Rochester? Anything you want to add?
I think Chris Shadd mentioned it, and those discussions occur at all levels where we have leaders of research programs up through Jean-Rico Ferrugia having discussions with folks. And we feel confident that there are a number of extraordinarily good prospects at this point in time that are interested in moving into the Rochester downtown to collaborate with Mayo Clinic. So And I also think, and Patrick and Chris alluded to this, but bringing in companies like Google to locate in Rochester has a tremendous effect on having other companies that want to locate close to them. And again, that's the flywheel that we need to get started so that not every company that comes into Rochester is there exclusively to work with Mayo Clinic, but that there's a broader, diversified ecosystem that's attracting companies to Rochester.
And Mr. Chair, Jeff, I just want to say the obvious, and what you probably don't hear enough is just what a amazing organization Mayo is, with all of the care and commitment that you and your team provide to the residents of Minnesota and the patients from even outside of our state. And it's unfortunate that we have that so strongly illustrated by a crisis like this year, but you know, our thoughts and well wishes go with you. This is a challenging path, and I know every day brings a new difficult decision for you, and we're encouraged by some of the good news coming forward, but this continues to be a challenging path for anyone in healthcare and for Mayo with certain particular qualities that make that even more challenging. So thank you for all you and your team are doing for all of us, and we wish you the best.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate the support of the board.
Other comments? Other comments? One question I had, Jeff, is when that point Pam was making about vendors, I think is a really important one. When, for instance, you're dealing in downtown Minneapolis, you care about how many square feet of office space Target gets, but you really care about the vendors that follow them. It does strike me the Discovery Square strategy is one that's bringing more vendors from coming in and out on a 1 or 2 day visit into locating there. And the more you can help us keep track of that as we do our projections, and also what sort of feedback you're getting on it, because that really is the, if not the holy grail, pretty darn close to it, to diversify the economy. We love Mayo, but we love the idea that a couple that may want to have one person working at Mayo should have somebody else in another profession be able to have high quality employment in the city too. Any thoughts on how we should be looking at the trailing companies that trail behind you that hopefully, and what we can do to attract them?
I think it's definitely, I mean, if you think about the Bentonville effect,
Right.
It's probably the perfect example of it. It's something that we are working on, and I think again, as we begin to build out that ecosystem, we'll be much more successful in doing that. But we'd be happy to keep track of that and maybe engage with others to help attract those types of businesses to Rochester.
I just think when from the start we had these different categories about people who live there, people who are coming to visit, et cetera, et cetera. This is this other category that's a sleeper, but hugely influential in what we do. Other comments, members? I see someone was in the chat there. Did someone, seeing nothing else? Do I see anything else? Okay, just want to thank you, Jeff. I thought Pam did such a great job of saying thank you to Mayo. And I just think passing from us the thanks to those of you who are running the place, but also those out on the front lines. Our hearts are with them right now. And it's every story we hear is about how incredibly difficult that work is. And just let them know we see them.
Well, thank you very much. I'll pass that on.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's turn to the EDA update. And Lisa, can I turn that back to you?
Okay, we are winding down. We've got two quick updates for you. One, which we mentioned earlier, we'll talk about the Waterfront small area plan, and then I'll give a quick update on our COVID-19 response as a community in a sense. So Patrick, do you want to start with the Waterfront plan?
Yes, I will. Mr. Chair, members, we have introduced this conversation of the waterfront as it related to the downtown area in the past and central to the development plan. More recently, a opportunity emerged with the sale of the Kmart site to a family here in Minnesota. And this is the Kmart site in this area right here. And then adjacent to that, just north of that, is the AMPI site, the milk processing site, which has is being decommissioned. And so this additional land is suddenly becoming available for redevelopment. And then north of that is property largely owned by Mayo Clinic, which is used as part of their parking strategy. And all of the property, and then OMC is in this area and a few other adjacent properties. All of the property owners, major property owners, and neighborhood representatives from these adjacent neighborhoods have agreed to come together to consider a development plan or a future vision for this area. And again, we're not here for any action today or particular discussion other than to let you know this work is going on. And again, it represents nearly 60 acres of land. So it's a very significant opportunity in the community. And to put it in scale, those of you in the Twin Cities might be familiar with the Ford site in St. Paul, which is 120 acres. So nearly half the scale of that site that is an emerging opportunity. So what I think, Mr. Chair, triggered for you as we were preparing this agenda is that this waterfront site really, in the area that we're studying, is really just outside the edge of the sort of traditional consideration of downtown and the waterfront that was the Bloom site. And so I think that what we wanted to introduce is that there was work going on that we think the riverfront, both in the downtown and in this area, is going to emerge as a top priority for this community over the next several years. And we'll be seeking your guidance and interest in the coming months.
Can I ask, as I anticipate some comments on this, can I ask what, if any, changes to boundaries would we need to be contemplating to be able to help in this area?
Mr. Chair, this is all part of the DMC district. So this is part of the DMC district.
Okay, great.
The DMC development plan was largely silent on this geography because it was an active industrial use, if you will, with the milk processing, and Kmart was still operating as a store. That said, the neighborhood, Slatterly Park neighborhood, has long envisioned the future of their neighborhood, and there has been, so we're able to leverage the work of that neighborhood in a planning process called Imagine Slatterly that's maybe 8 or 10 years old, but still germane to this. So this is emerging in a way that wasn't available in 2015.
Great. Any comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Paul.
So just curious, one, I love the notion of having folks kind of create a shared vision. Is this limited only to the east side of the river there? I don't know exactly what's to the west, that little sliver kind of starting at, let's just say, 3rd or 4th, going down towards that site. Is it, and I'm just purely thinking about what will happen on the west side of the river versus the east side of the river. Is there any collective thinking about both sides of the river? It just strikes me that it's an opportunity, not just on the one side of the river. And again, that may be a premature conversation at this point, or question.
No, absolutely, fair point. And certainly as this progresses, we will. So really what we did is, again, with the opportunity that emerged between the new ownership of Kmart and AMPI suddenly becoming available, and Mayo saying, well, we're willing to be part of the conversation as well, given our land ownership, to assemble, and then of course the neighborhood nearby. So, but absolutely, Paul, this will, ultimately this has to connect both sides of the river and the downtown.
And Mr. Chair,
Go ahead,
I would just Yeah, the little sliver over there that was the former Bloom project site is at the tip, yeah, right over there, as well as the government center to the right of the government center. Nope, the other side. Oh, yeah, other way to the right over there. There's a parking lot and area that the city also owns those properties. And the little sliver that you talked about earlier is the area I took to the Mayor's Institute on City Design, and they gave us some ideas. But one of the things, they did give us ideas, but one of the messages they sent us back with is think more broadly about the whole riverfront as a project, and make sure you're, it's a comprehensive plan. Don't just piece it and parse it out and piece it. Think about this riverfront as really a project together. There may be different components to it, but you know, have that in your thought. And so I agree, Paul, that the little sliver, we should think about that. And there, because the city owns some of this property, not the part in the red, but the city owns the sliver as well as to the right of the government center. That has possibilities, of course, for projects where we could, for instance, assure affordable housing because we own that land, and land is one of the, you know, the key factors in raising the price of rents, right? And we own that, so we could assure affordable housing might be part of that development moving ahead. So I'm excited about what we have for Rochester. We have never really developed along the river. It's a little harsh looking with the flood control project, which, you know, we're going to have to keep in mind as we're getting more flooding and more water. We have to be really, you know, make sure if we need to build that up as we go along. I don't know if we do. This may not be the place where we need to worry, but I just think we have so much opportunity here to really create something exciting for our community.
You know, Mayor, that point about harsh looking is a really interesting one, because it was just some really nice day. I happened to be in Rochester, and I walked down across what's going to be Discovery Walk and down to Soldiers Field and over across, and it felt really good. And I got to the river over on that side in this area, and it did feel pretty concrete. And part of that is, well, it's going to be necessary, and the other part is really hard to undo that. But just standing there thinking about it, I thought, you know, the best way to soften this river experience is actually to animate the river itself. You know, rental paddle boards that can be going up and down. Our original planners showed us what's being done in Buffalo with ice skating and others. I do not want to be shown up by Buffalo, but they certainly are on waterfronts right now. And I think your point is a real good one. And it ties back to Pam's earlier point about that moment when you get down to the Civic Center, you don't really know all the rest of that is there. I just think it's a really exciting thought for us, because if what we're trying to do in those goals we were talking about earlier is about draw these connections to other part of town, this is creating a there that is a draw. And I'm just really excited about us having an opportunity to help on this. Other comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Pam.
So I just am so excited about this. I think there's such great potential, and change is hard, and you never want to see businesses leave or close, but it does create new opportunities for our community as well. And I really, Mayor, I'm intrigued about the idea of being more intentional about looking at the whole riverfront area beyond this small area plan geography. And I continue to wonder about the prospects for a stronger residential element downtown, because I think particularly this year, when you see so many employees who are now working from home or businesses who have reduced hours, that downtown residential base is just so critical to supporting those small businesses, in addition to Mayo patients and to downtown employees. So that resiliency that the downtown will have with a stronger residential community is really, I think, got to be part of our goal longer term. And the question is, you know, how do we understand and build a demand for that product and move that forward? But I'm just really excited about this.
Good. Okay, seeing no other comments, I'm excited that we'll be able to have this coming back to us. Lisa, do you want to continue with the EDA updates?
Well, our final update is just the mayor actually did this update in essence. So just to thank you, Mayor, for talking about the collaborative effort in Rochester and getting on it early. So we just wanted you to know with this slide that DMC is in the game of relief, recovery, resiliency during the COVID pandemic. We are partners in these 3 areas. There's a lot of grant programming going along, including we had an anonymous donor of $1 million who supported small businesses in downtown. We are partnering with businesses and other organizations on outdoor patios, liquor license, free parking, utility fees. The city, the county, everybody's been doing a great job. We've started this initiative called Rochester Ready, where we're bringing the downtown, basically the downtown organizations are all together. We meet weekly and we're facing the same direction, and we're trying very hard to work together so we can leverage one another's resources and strengths to really help the downtown businesses or businesses in general in Rochester. And we're doing some programming in terms of training and promotion. We've learned very quickly, as our businesses have, that they have to pivot, and they have to pivot fast, and they have to change their business models. And we in the DMC world are actually helping them do that. We're bringing experts to the table with independent businesses to say, how can you change your business to survive through this pandemic? So there's a lot going on. Over 800 businesses have received direct support from all of our initiatives. And the mayor is very involved in that, as well as Aaron and others on this call. So the county's involved as well. And so hats off to a collaborative effort. It's not easy. We've been running fast, kind of with our hair on fire, trying to plug the holes in the dike. And now we are going to be able to actually look forward and try to think about some resiliency over the next 6 to 12 months. So it's been a great team effort. And I think we are ahead of the game, certainly ahead of other communities.
One of the illustrations of that I remember from this meeting was seeing those barriers that were put up very quickly to help restaurants have more outdoor space. And they weren't just barriers, they were painted and all that. And I think that's a great example of the work that you and Patrick have done. Is that the last thing you're going to say to us?
Yeah, the last thing is on December 10th. On December 10th, we are having what we used to call our annual dinner, our annual program, our annual dinner. We're doing it all virtually right now. And so we'll be sending you all information on our annual dinner this year, December 10th. And then you can watch it whenever fits your schedule, but that's when we're going to start to roll it out. It's a 45-minute program, short, succinct, talks about all the stuff we talked about today and then some. So we'll make sure that you tune into that. And with that, Chair Ryback, that's a wrap for me. And
Okay.
That's the conclusion of EDA's report.
Okay, we are going to thank you so much one final time for getting us this spot, Lisa. It's a pretty amazing thing, and don't be a stranger. But have a good time too. Our next regular meeting is February 3rd at 9:30. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion in a second. And I think we should give Kathleen one more chance to call a roll because you've enjoyed it so much.
You're on
Kathleen,
mute,
you're
Kath.
on mute.
I was all prepared with a smart remark and I was on mute.
I'm not the only one.
Oh, it worked good.
All right, motion to adjourn. Beer.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Doherty. Norton.
Aye.
Ryback.
Hi.
Staver.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Wheelock.
Aye.
Doherty. Lisa.
Mike? Yes?
I was just saying, do you want to vote to adjourn?
Oh, I'd love to vote to adjourn. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the 7 votes aye, 0 votes nay.
Very good. Thanks, everybody.
Congratulations, Lisa.
Thanks,
Thank
Lisa.
you. Thanks
Best
for all the
wishes.
nice comments. Thank
Yeah.
you.